Thank you for staying with Daybreak. We're about to get into that conversation that we promised you earlier, but now there's something we don't usually do. Let's take a look at the business segment of Daily Nation.
Of the newspapers.
Yes, see what's happening there and then find out if there's anything that is a bit more interesting than what we're about to talk about. That is the issue of taxation. That's one thing we're going to talk about as well. We're also going to talk about the issue around
oil prices
and gaps.
In fact, that is also on Daily Nation.
In fact, there's another one here on page 34, which is one of the issues that we're going to touch on generally. Maize flour prices set to rise higher as farmers hoard grain. So the small-scale flour millers have raised concern over acute shortage of white maize in the market, despite reports indicating that Rift Valley farmers are hoarding recently harvested grains to press for better prices in the future. So the millers, through their lobby, United Grain Millers Association, want the government to immediately open a duty-free window for imports to address the shortage that has kept the flour prices high in January. Which school did you go to, by the way? You know, is it maize flour or maize flour?
Maize flour.
Flour.
Flour. F-L-O-U-R.
It's flour. But anyway, that's a story for another day. We'll find out from our guest as well if that is a concern. Kenya demands removal of hefty Ugandan taxes. All right. This is interesting because the Trade Principal Secretary, Dr. Chris Kiptoo, is actually here already, and also I see a picture of him as well on the front page. Nairobi to retaliate if Kampala does not scrap excise charge on Kenyan products. This is part of the things we were talking about earlier on. So Kenya will retaliate on excise duty that Uganda is charging on pharmaceuticals, beer and spirit exports to that country if Kampala does not abolish the high taxes. So Trade PS, that's Chris Kiptoo, who's already here, said they had a discussion with Uganda in December during a trade mission in Kampala, and it was agreed that Uganda would abolish the 13% excise duty on Kenya's pharmaceutical, beer and spirits as well. Dr. Chris said there was need to harmonize taxes to create a level playing field for both countries. Harmonizing of taxes. That's another issue we're going to talk about in just a bit.
So yeah. I've been taking a look at the Daily Nation as you were talking, because it's the issue of oil pricing. Yesterday, if you take a look at, let's say, oil, for example, Brent oil, it went up by 2%, now retailing at $69 per barrel as of yesterday. This is in regards to the oil prices having to go up due to the US and Iran conflict. This is also on page 8 and 29 of the Daily Nation. Let me just read a small part for you here. It says, Iran fired a volley of missiles yesterday as Iraqi base housing US and other foreign troops. The Islamic Republicans first act in its promised revenge for the US killing of our top Iranian general. We've seen how that has going to affect global oil prices, and we know what happens when oil prices are affected. It trickles down all the way to the price of bread. That story can be found on page 8 and page 29 of the Daily Nation.
All right, we have a lot to discuss, so let's get straight into it. We'll talk about three different sectors: credit, access and debt, taxing the SMEs, and the employment gaps as well. Let's start by introducing our guest from my immediate right. Thank you so much for making time this morning. Dr. Jim Mcfie, an accounting lecturer at Strathmore University. Thank you for making time. Followed by Dr. Chris Kiptoo, the PS Trade, a man who needs no introduction. Thank you so much for coming in. And Mr. Maurice Oray, Deputy Commissioner, Corporate Policy, Kenya Revenue Authority. Thank you for making time as well. And last but not least, Joy Kiru, an economist. Thank you for making time. Let's start with a general outlook, Dr. Jim, and I'll start with you. What is your general economic outlook for 2020 from where you stand?
Well, it's very uncertain. And I want to start actually in last year in February, I was in a conference in Mauritius, and people were saying, well, you know, the outlook is very poor on a world basis. And I said, well, you know, for us in Kenya, it's a little bit different. Things are really looking positive. And it turned out to be a rather disastrous year economically for Kenya. And one of the big things there is the fact that the government has not paid its bills. And even though President Uhuru Kenyatta has actually sent a letter to all the government ministries to pay their bills, unless this is done, the economic outlook in Kenya as a whole is in fact very, very uncertain. Because many, if you, for example, you have the Daily Nation there, you also have the Standard. If you look in the Tuesday Standard, there are 4 pages of properties being sold by auctioneers. In the Monday Standard, there were 7 pages of auctioneers' advertisements for properties sold. very big names in Kenya are losing their properties. Why? Because they're owed millions of shillings in some cases by the government. Now, unless this is resolved, this has a trickle down. You were talking about a trickle down effect in petroleum, but it has a trickle down effect in the whole of the economy of Kenya. And this is critical. This is absolutely critical. I was at a very high-end school the other day. I spoke to the administrator, and he says, I'm having a terrible problem collecting fees. I said, but now wait a moment. I sit in the car park here. I see Pajeros, Prados, Mercedes, Jeeps, Audis. What are you talking about? He said, well, you see this man who's just been with me now? He's owed 40 million shillings by Meru County. He's a contractor. He's going bankrupt. He can't even pay his school fees. So we got to understand the importance of cash flow.
Okay.
I can have a profit, but if I don't have any cash, I can go bankrupt. So we got to understand the importance of that. Now, compounded with this, admittedly, you know, the recent events in Iran, you know, the killing of that general in Baghdad in Iraq, you know, it's actually raised the price of oil by only 5%. But it is, as you say, critical because 20% of our imports into Kenya, and we have a huge trade deficit, but 20% of our imports is oil alone.
20% of Kenya's import alone.
Of all imports. So that means that if the price of that is going to go up, our trade balance is going to go down further.
Okay.
Fortunately, we have the diaspora. Amongst, I can count many of my past students, really clever people. And I'm telling the youth of Kenya today, get so well qualified that you can work like Oscar Nyango, who's the chief financial officer of a company in Silicon Valley. Or Nancy Kiriro, who is the chief financial officer of an insurance company in Los Angeles. Why? Because we are not creating jobs in Kenya. And we've got to think about the future of Kenya, not me, Kenya. This is critical because very few of us are thinking about the future of the country. And this, unless we change, God help us.
Dr. Chris, from the trade perspective, how does it look like from the government?
I think we had challenges last year, but my look of this year looks certain. For me, it looks bright. I think there is a lot that we expect to do much better. We've just had a long period of extended rain, you know, in the country. Yes, we had floods. It had some challenges here and there, but I think the agriculture sector is going to experience a boom, and you can see already. And you know, the backbone of our economy is agriculture. 30% of our GDP is in agriculture. So when the agriculture sector does well, we expect that the economy will grow. So I want to give some encouragement to my colleague here that I think we will be doing well. On the issue of pending bills, I think that matter has been addressed. We were instructed not to leave office. We were not even given time to go for Christmas because the president wanted that issue to be something of the past. And I can confirm from my own State Department, I have zero balance.
As a PS of trade?
As a PS of trade.
What is that big challenge that you're talking about in 2019 that for you feel like this was definitely...
No, I think mostly it is because we had a lot of pending bills and the challenge was more about exchequer receipts. You may have, you have already received services from a contractor, you want to pay, but we had a few of challenges here and there. But we had some austerity measures which were taken. And those austerity measures meant that we had to cut back on a number of activities. My own State Department suffered a 50% cut in terms of travel and other activities. So we had to live within our means. But in the meantime, we used the savings to now pay our pending bills. So zero balance in the State Department of Trade. And I know that is the case for almost all other ministries, except those which had issues around audit or you had queries, especially those relating to other years, which the president gave 1 month to be sorted. And I expect that this month, January, that will be sorted. And I think there is a new spirit in government to say, let's let's pay.
Okay.
And I think that's what I was pushing my team for. Any service already given, let's pay instead of taking up more services.
Okay.
But I think this issue of lack of payment is not only with government. In fact, the biggest problem is also with the private sector.
Okay.
I have been handling the retail sector, for instance, for a while, and I know a lot of supermarkets have not paid a lot of money, and some of them even, even Nakumatt has gone down with a lot of money. So we started with some regulations. How do we deal with prompt payments? And we have come up with regulations which have now been put under Competition Authority Act. And in that we have recommended, if you are dealing with fresh produce, like milk, like vegetable, which have a short shelf life, why would you take ages to pay? And you have paid, you have sold it, you got the money, you should pay. Okay. So we have agreed within 15 days of when you give your invoice, that should be shortened. And then for fast consumer goods, I think we agreed on a number of days between 30, 40, 35 days up to 45 days.
But are there penalties for those who don't adhere to that? Because then the issue is always the policies are there, but nobody adheres to it. In the regulations we developed, and I need to check the letters because they just came out, and they are now in my State Department, in within Treasury, under Competition Authority. But we had recommended that if you don't pay, you attract interest, so that you have to pay for the late payment through more interest. And also, I also find it curious that you say the economic outlook, especially agriculture, 30% of our GDP, you say that it's positive, but we just came out from floods. There's a chance that, and we have a locust invasion as well, and also we know from floods we'll go to drought. How can you be so
but I think the truth is that if the critical ingredient to agriculture is water. So there's a lot of water. I've just come from, from holiday, and I see a lot of what is being grown out there. It's doing well. Yes, there were floods. Some of the roads are not doing well. We have locust invasion, but that's also in some parts of Kenya. I just wanted us to also be positive. Let's not be negative and be pessimistic.
Right. Murisuri, what's your economic outlook for 2020?
Yes. From a tax point of view, I would say that in terms of what we have put in place as the Kenya Revenue Authority and even the government, the main focus is on how to ensure that the tax base is expanded. And when you talk of tax base expansion, there are two elements. There's the legal aspect, ensuring that there's an enabling legal framework to allow all taxpayers to pay their taxes. And then there's the administrative aspect, to ensure that the systems are in place to enable taxpayers to pay their taxes easily, and to also ensure that compliance and enforcement is managed to allow all taxpayers pay their fair share of taxes. And I need to note this from the perspective of the turnover tax that we have introduced through the Finance Act 2019. First of all, I need to say that one of the key principles of taxations is fairness. And the second, which is also critical, is neutrality. Fairness, you need to basically means that you have to tax everyone who has income in a fair manner. Neutrality means that you don't discriminate. One of the issues that we are addressing, for example, we are saying that if you have income, then you need to pay your taxes. It doesn't say that if you pay your taxes only when you are a big enterprise. It says all of you pay your taxes based on the fact that, again, the fairness principle applies.
Definitely. We'll be diving into the tax conversation even further in the course of the show.
Yes.
All right. Joy, for you, what's the economic outlook for 2020? What are you looking towards?
As an economist, my views are informed by a couple of things. First, what I hear, what I see around me, what I feel, and what I think. I hear people talking like him. I hear what the government is saying. Oh, the economy is going to grow at about 6% or 5.8%. I hear that the rains have been good. You're going to be good. We are doing well, on the right path. I hear that a lot. I see desperation. I see a government struggling with 60% of taxes to pay debts. I see a government with no money to invest. I see a government thinking of borrowing when they have almost burst the limit, the actual limit, by a lot of measures. I see a government in denial of the reality, or trying to talk tough when they're actually inside, they could be melting. Kufa kimwanaume. I see the government behaving like that. And I see the people desperate. I see people juggling loans from Fuliza, from Tala, from Branch, from the bank. I see desperation. And what do I think? I think we're in a mess. And I think it's a time we all accepted the mess, saying this is a mess that we need to clean up. Being in denial is not going to help any of us. And as an economist, I still feel like we are just about the tipping point. We are just about there. If any little thing like a wind, a shock, an economic comes, we are going to topple. So the thing is, we still have some room, but we must act quickly before we topple. Mm-hmm. Okay. So I think 2019, every Kenyan, the government, and each one of us is going to be walking a thin thread.
That's in 2020, you mean?
In 2020, you're going to be walking a thin thread. Mm. We better know how to balance and how to minimize our risks and how to try and normalize things a little bit.
Okay. All right, on that note, let's take a quick break. When we come back, now we are going to talk about these issues one at a time. In fact, we want to combine trade and taxation at the same time. From the government, we'd like to hear, how are you ensuring that the SMEs are being supported in order to thrive? And from KRA as well, we'd like to hear about this turnover tax. How fair is this? You mentioned fairness, but also, if I run at a loss, then what happens? Am I still going to pay the tax when I can't even afford it myself? And also we'll get from the economists their angle as well of how to cushion these people and where to draw the line really when it comes, are we taxing ourselves to death? That's a question that most people are wondering. We'd also like to hear from you. 22422 is the SMS line, at Trevor Mbija, at Citizen TV Kenya, at Zinzi_K. Use the hashtag Daybreak. We'd like to hear experience as well, especially if you're a small scale trader out there. If you have any questions, we have all the government representation here. Ask and we'll pose it directly to them. We'll see you in just a bit.